So it's been a while since I've done any of these recordings, and some of you have asked for some so you can practice at home. So hopefully this meets the need. So let's start. I think what we'll do is to start by sitting actually, because that is challenging enough in itself, and I know some of you really struggle with this. So if you just start by coming into Sukhasana like this then, which ironically is known as comfortable seat, although for many people really not comfortable. And just feel it initially. So I'm just going to invite you to close your eyes and just feel your seat. And just notice what part of your base you're sitting on. So whether you can feel that you're sitting on your sitting bones, or whether you're sitting back on your tail, and therefore whether your tail is in some way compromised, and how easeful this feels through your spine, whether your back muscles are having to grip to keep you here, whether there's a rounding to your upper back, whether there's a dropping to your skull. So just notice all of that. And then let's see if we might positively change it a little bit, with the idea in mind that we can sit here then for prolonged periods of time without pulling on the back muscles and without being distracted by discomfort in the body. So maybe open the eyes just so you can see what we're going to do. And I would suggest, because it's closer to the camera actually, that you take your left foot onto the mat like this, if you can. And so your right leg stays bent. Okay, and have your hands wherever you want them to be. But just really come into your left foot as much as you can, so you're conscious of your left foot. Even to the extent that maybe the heel just comes up momentarily, so you're conscious of the heel as a round space. And you can almost allow more roundness as the heel comes back down onto the mat. And I mean, you can even look, right? Just notice your inner and outer ankle bone, whether you have a tendency to drop. It's my tendency by the look of it. So there's a gathering through the inner and outer ankle bone, and then there'll be a little lifting, I would imagine, through the insole of that left foot. And almost this sense of narrowing the foot generally, with a sense then that the knee joints can go deeper into your hip joint, almost like you're concertinaing your thigh a little bit. And then you might start to notice, in theory, more freedom through the tail. So it's almost like you could, if you wanted to, take the weight into that left foot, and there's a sense of the pelvis going up a little bit. But you're just feeling into that. So sometimes these instructions or invitations, you don't really know what to do with them. Certainly that was how I felt initially practicing this particular way. But actually, I've learned that if you just take the invitation into the body will do something with it. So already my body's responding to that invitation to find more of the left heel, to allow more of the left knee, to find more of the left hip, to free more of my tail. And so already my pubic bones are going back, there's more of a softness in my belly, and I'm more conscious of my hip bones. And so then when I come back to Sukhasana, already that's changed something for me, I would imagine, in that left side. So now I'm less likely to want to just drop the knee, because then that makes it feel really sort of dead through the hip joint. So why don't you try that on the other side? Keep your left knee bent, or both knees are bent, and bring the right foot forward. And again, the hands can be on the mat. You might close the eyes. There's still a sense of going up through the spine, we're not dropping the skull. And come into your right foot and just really find the right foot. The heel might come up. Find more roundness to the heel as it comes back down onto the mat. Notice what's happening through the ankle joint and lift through the inner and outer ankle joint. Find more of a sense of lift through your inner arch without pushing onto the outer arch. And then that right knee joint wanting to find more of the right hip joint, and the tail wanting to free itself. And your sacrum will want to go deeper into your back almost, and I think you'll find that your back muscles will want to start softening and your spine will go deeper. And then maybe that takes you to your breath. So that then when you come back into Sukhasana, and we haven't played around with that for very long, but maybe already there has been a change, so that we find ourselves really still in our feet, with the knees wanting to find more of each other, and the knees also wanting to find more of the hips. And then maybe we start to find more of the back of the upper thighs and more of the front of the sitting bones, so we're not on the back of the sitting bones and we're not on the tail. So it's almost like your belly wants to rest forward as if it was resting on water, as if you were about to go breaststroke swimming. But actually the upper body wants to rest back, almost like, you know, you've got one of those Swiss balls or something behind you and you just rest it back a little bit. And the skull rests back a little bit as well. And then your hands can rest on your thighs. And then just finding a little bit more lightness, softness through your middle. A little bit more of your armpits and your elbows. And then almost as if you were sitting in water up to your waist, your hands might rest on the imaginary water. And you might just take a little twist to your right. So breathing in, breathing out, just a little twist. You won't go very far, I wouldn't imagine, to the right. Still there's your armpits, your shoulders. And then you can take a breath in, breath out, come back to the centre and take a little twist to your left. So there's your breath. Not forcing the breath, this idea of freeing the lungs. And then we'll take another breath in, breath out. And come all the way back to the middle. And then almost this sense, actually, bizarrely, that you want to hug someone ahead of you. So imagine you've got someone that you love sitting ahead of you, and you just want to come in to hug them a little bit. So there's a sense of heart meeting heart, but there's still a sense of the belly wanting to find more of the water. And you really deepen your feet, and I know some of you have practiced this quite a bit with me at class. So deepen the feet, knees to hips, so that actually you might get to a point where you can just roll over onto knees. It doesn't work for everyone. And there's a sense of coming from the tail up the spine, so that even when your hands come down onto the mat, you don't lose that sense of coming up through the spine. So you don't suddenly come onto all fours, you don't suddenly create right angles, you don't suddenly push into the back of the heart. And then maybe the feet can come apart from here, and if you found that really tricky, you can just join me here. So there's the sense of the sitting bones of wanting to find the floor. I say the sitting bones, more so genitalia wants to find the floor between your heels or on top of your heels. So the pelvis, as you can see, is going back and a little bit down in space, but it doesn't feel like it's going down, it actually feels like it's going up. And there's your hands just ahead of your knees, and there's a sense of coming from your tail up through your crown. And there's a roundness to the shoulders, as if the hips and the shoulders are framing the spine. And then the tricky bit actually is to not make it about being on hands and knees as the toes tuck under. So trying to find a way of tucking your toes under that doesn't force you onto all fours. And then we'll have a go at a dog, where we have an awareness of the knees wanting to still find the hips, and there's a sense almost of going up through the spine. So maybe one knee comes up and the other knee comes up, and there's a real sense of the spine being deep in the back and still going up, even though in many respects it feels like it's going down. It's still going up through your upper spine as your knees still have a sense of hips. You're not lifting the sitting bones per se, and instead the heels find more of the earth. And you just breathe here with a sense of softness through the back. And just notice the sense that you could take your feet perhaps either side of your hands, and equally you could take your hands inside your feet. The choice. I think instead what we're going to do, just doing it almost in a way that sways the legs and doesn't push into your upper back. One foot comes forward and then the other foot comes forward, and maybe you have to bend the knees. And then maybe the hands can come back towards the feet, and again you haven't dropped the upper body. And the shoulders are not pulling towards the ears. And there's almost a sense of concertinaing through your middle. And then just notice how that feels. There's freedom through the tail. Maybe the hands come a little bit closer to your feet. Take your hands onto your shins actually if you need to. Just really try to resist dropping into the posture and becoming really heavy. So actually when you're in this position where there's still a sense of going up through the spine, even though I know it looks like you're going down through the spine, it makes it much less burdensome on the back muscles to come up to stand. So find your knees to hips, tail is free, spine is free, and take a breath in and come up from there. And you're in quite a wide-legged asana initially. Just notice how that feels. And maybe just bring the feet a bit closer together. And notice how that feels. And find a little bit more softness through the back of the knees. Still that invitation for knees to find more of the hips. Almost like you're still sitting, there's freedom through the tail. The tummy wants to find more of the water. The upper back and the chest do not want to find more of the water, at least not right now. And there's a softness through the skull and through the forehead especially. And then we're going to maybe open the eyes if they're not already open, and we'll take a breath in, breath out, step the left foot back a little bit. And find the water as if you're standing in water up to your hips. Take a little twist to your right. So breathing in, breathing out, twisting to your right. And then taking another breath in, breath out, coming all the way back to the centre. And still the sense going up through the spine. Even as you start to take a little forward fold, so Parsvottanasana, sorry, I suddenly couldn't remember what it was called. So we'll take a breath in, breath out. So even though there's a sense of folding over this right leg, you still haven't lost your upper spine. You haven't become heavy. So that then, when you've started to go into this forward fold, it might be that you can start to take more weight onto the right foot, as if your head was going to go forward but not drop forward, and as if you're still going up through your spine, so your left foot might just float away from the mat. And be deep in your left foot, so it's the left foot that takes the left leg up, rather than the left leg taking the left foot up. And then just take a breath in, breath out, pop the left foot back on the mat. Come all the way back. Bring the eyes open so that you can find like a focal point, because then we'll see if we can transition into Vritsasana from here without dropping that left knee. So as breathing in, and the left foot comes up and forward, and maybe the left foot rests on top of the front of the right thigh. And there's still a sense of feeling the water, there's still a sense of coming up through the spine, and there's still a sense of the knee, the left knee wanting to find more of the left hip, so not dropping away level. And there's your breath, and there's ease and softness through the belly. And then we'll take a breath in, breath out, and the left foot can go back down onto the mat. Just closing the eyes and just feeling into the body, because I think you'll start to feel actually that your left sort of hip bones become more defined. And maybe there's more a sense of being in your middle. As you take a breath in, breath out, and the right foot steps back this time. And there's a softness through the knees and a sense of standing in water. Hands feeling the water, so there's more of your armpits. And just taking a breath in, breath out, just turning towards the left this time. With a sense of softening into your calf muscles. Gathering of your shoulder blades without pushing your heart forward, and then a breath in, breath out, come back. So there's a resting of the breastbone. Even then, as you start to find a forward fold, so you're still going up through the spine. You're not dropping the upper body as you take a breath in, breath out. There's your feet, feet to knees, knees to hips. Not lifting the sitting bones. Not dropping the upper body or the head, hands resting on the water, shoulders framing the spine. And then getting to a point where actually maybe it would be quite nice to still be going up through the spine as the weight comes onto the left foot and you find more of your right tippy toes. And just wait for that moment where all of a sudden the right foot just floats its way up. And let the right foot take the right leg up. So Virabhadrasana 3. And then from there take a breath in, breath out, the right foot goes back down. in, breath out, coming into Vrksasana again. So right foot on top of the front of the left thigh, perhaps. The knee moving upwards in space, or at least it's collecting towards the right hip. Softness through your back. And then a breath in and a breath out, just releasing the right foot back down onto the mat. And then we'll come down from here. We'll see if we might come through a little squat, where there's still a sense of the knees coming up to the hips, rather than pushing the knees forward and creasing the back of them. And rather than dropping the pelvis, although it's not necessarily easy. So with your breath, there's your hands, there's your feet, the knees coming up to the hips as much as possible. Maybe it takes you more into your ankles. Still that softness if you can through your belly. Knees coming back up into hips, tail is free. Knees back up into hips, tail is free. As much as possible. Upper back free. And then from there, bringing yourself all the way down onto hands and knees. And just pausing if you can in Vajrasana. So even here, or you could take it into Virasana actually, where you take your feet either side of your hips. But again, not tucking the tail under if you can avoid it. And a real sense of still coming up through your spine. So that maybe even here, almost more of the genitalia has more of the mat. And there's no dropping. And the tummy still wants to find the water. But the chest, the upper back, rests back a little bit, head rests back. Armpits, breath. Maybe closing the eyes and just noticing the breath, the ease, the softness through the back. And then we'll take a breath in, open the eyes. As you breathe out, coming off this position, being mindful as you do so. Maybe going sideways on your mat. I'll go towards you. Okay. And just from here, bringing yourself onto your back without dropping the spine. So there are your feet, there are your shoulders, there are your hands, there are your elbows, there's the back of your skull. And again, the shoulders are framing the spine, the hips are framing the spine. Knees to hips, hands to shoulders, shoulders, feet, spine deep, taking a breath in, breath out, hands, feet. There's a sense of the whole spine coming up, not just a lifting of the pelvis. Knees to hips, feet. Breath, upper lungs or upper lobes of lungs. Chin may be moving away from the chest, so the neck is not compromised. Breath. And then taking a breath in, and as you breathe out, releasing yourself, pelvis comes down without dropping, knees still, feeding to hips. And then from here, again, without dropping, just releasing one leg, then the other leg. Maybe rolling arms so the palms face the ceiling. And even then, already perhaps noticing more freedom for the breath. Noticing how the breath comes in where it goes. Sense of filling the entirety of the lungs having some freedom. And then I'm just going to leave you resting here for as long as you can. But when you've finished resting, just sitting yourself up and just noticing how your seat has changed.